question for you. What's brown and sticky? But the real question is, how did I use these to help make one of my latest paintings? And why was it one of the best decisions I've ever made? To find out, we're gonna have to go back in time a few months. First of all, I'm full of a cold, that's why I sound like this. I've not done much painting this week, but that's about to change. Not the cold, I'm still gonna have the sniffles, but I'm gonna try and get some painting done today. I'm not gonna start like I normally do. I'm gonna try something a little bit different. Normally I'd just jump straight in on a white background with my painting, but I don't want to do that today. So I'm gonna do a grey base coat all over the canvas. So before I can get started with my painting on that, I've got to let it dry obviously, but I also need an idea of what to paint. And I've got a little bit of an idea. One of my friends that I used to work with is an amazing photographer and he lets me use his photos as reference, which is amazing. And I've got a reference photo of some wax wings here, which I'll show you. And basically I want to do a small painting of those wax wings, but I'm not quite sure on the composition and the positioning of them. So I need to do a few little sketches and studies to really try and refine this idea and get it somewhere that I think will turn into a good painting. I've already done some thumbnail sketches. Hopefully you can see those. So I did a little sort of copied the composition of the photograph, wasn't quite happy with it, decided where I wanted things to move with these smaller thumbnails. I'm a little bit happier with some of these, and now I'm going to transfer some of these to a bigger drawing that is the same size as my canvas, and then I'm going to use that, transfer it over to the canvas to paint. The easiest way to make sure they're the same size is going to take my canvas and draw around it. Easy as that.
I love using mechanical pencils for drawings like this because I love how simple it is. You've got one size of lead and you've got to build up your form by cross-hatching and layering just like you would do with acrylic paints. So I'm pretty used to building up all of those darker tones using layers. In terms of the composition for this one, I decided to move the birds around a little bit, and also I swapped the positioning of the birds on the branches so that they're not all looking left or all looking right. I adjusted their heads to try and make the picture a little bit more interesting. I've just really started the process of this painting, and even though I'm just drawing at the moment, I already know that the most difficult part of this piece is going to be the branches, trying to get them to look realistic, and also trying to make them not look flat or boring.
So now I've got my drawing done. It's not a super detailed drawing, it's just for the transfer. I need to get this onto here, and I'm going to do that with some carbon paper.
Now I've got that initial drawing transferred, I can start the painting process. I'm starting by blocking in the background just really roughly with some acrylic paints. I'm keeping it quite loose and quite watery because I have plans for doing multiple layers on this so that we get a nice soft focus blended background.
I've just spent 2 hours in bed because I feel absolutely awful, but here's a start with the picture. I'm going to try and paint in some branches now and see how far I get before I need to go back to bed again.
I'm just building the branches up with thin layers of acrylic paint. I'm using quite thin transparent paint so that some of those layers of grey that I put down as the undercoat show through. I'm trying to achieve sort of a greyer, less saturated look to the background of this piece. But not everything's going to plan.
So, looking at this picture, it's there. I'm struggling a little bit with the branches. I just think they're looking a little bit flat and boring. And I think that's because I'm working from a photo reference and trying to sort of make things up as well, because I don't want to copy that photo reference exactly. But I think to make it a little bit more interesting, I'm going to go out and actually find some branches, bring them back to the studio and paint them from life and see if that adds just a little bit more like of a 3D element to the piece. Unfortunately though, it is absolutely chucking it down, so don't be expecting any footage of me going outside. I'm much soggier now, but I've got my sticks, so let's see what we can do with these and get painting.
I arranged the sticks in a way that I thought looked pleasing and would complement the picture, and I also arranged the lighting in my studio to match that of the lighting on the birds. I'm finding it's much easier to see the 3D form of those branches than it is when I was looking at the 2D photograph. I'm also finding it much easier to simplify the branches when I'm painting them from life. So I can get their form and their structure down onto my canvas much easier than when I'm copying that complicated photo. It made me realise the more I can get out and actually paint and draw from life, the better.
Finally done with all of those branches and berries, and we can make a start on the birds now. I'm feeling a little bit better, but still not sounding great, as you can probably tell. But I think I'm going to leave it there for today and then come back to this fresh in the morning, hopefully healthier in the morning as well, and then try and get a little blocking layer in acrylics on these birds and then go from there.
I decided to skip the acrylics and just moved straight into oils instead. I did that because I wanted everything to look a little bit softer on these birds, and also the oils are just a little bit more vibrant. I mean, I'm not trying to create something super saturated, but even with these desaturated colours, the oils just have a little bit more of a pop than the acrylic paints. I normally do an acrylic wash underneath my oil paints, but I decided to skip it for this painting. The main reason I do that acrylic wash is because I feel a little bit more comfortable with acrylics, fiddling around with things and changing things. I can basically mess around with the paints on the canvas. Whereas with oils, I'm not quite as confident with them, and I feel like if I've put a mark down, it needs to be in the right place. For these birds, I had a solid reference photo to work from, so I felt confident in my ability to just put the oils down straight away. One of my challenges for 2025 is to slow down a little bit with my painting process and not rush through everything as much as I normally do. So what I'm going to try and start doing is doing some underpaintings in oil paints rather than acrylics. It's going to force me to really slow down and take a lot more care with the initial stages of my paintings. I'm experimenting with trying to create more interesting compositions and more complex scenes, so that slowing down is going to be really important for my future paintings. I decided that the birds just looked a little bit too different to the background, and the background was just lost a little bit. It wasn't as vibrant, so I thought I would add some oil paints over the background just to brighten it up a little bit and also blend the edges of the birds into the background so that it didn't look like they were just stuck on and painted on top. This was a lot easier than it would have been with acrylics. I'm really happy with how this piece turned out, and I learned a lot from it, and I'm also really excited to see where my paintings will go this year. I hope you enjoyed the video, As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.